Can you hear me now, Bill?
I can. Can you hear me?
That is fantastic.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Sorry for
I,
the delay.
I believe we are now broadcasting on Facebook Live. So apologies to everyone for that bit of a misstart, but now we are launching our virtual fireside chat. I'm Catherine Holt, the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Bill Lewis, who is the chair of the Greater Victoria Hotel Association. And the association is a very important player in the region. 30 hotels are members, and hotels are a fundamental part of our tourist economy. Many iconic hotels in our region, the Magnolia being one of them. And Bill is also the general manager of the Magnolia. So welcome, Bill.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Catherine.
And this has been a very tough time for hotels, as I said, as major players in the tourist sector, and our loss of tourist traffic from the end of cruises, the closing of the border, people staying at home. All of this has been very much felt by hotels. So I'm going to start with a few questions, and then we have a couple of questions already from our audience, and I encourage any of you listening to submit questions through the comment section on Facebook. So let's get going. Just as, to set the context for us, Bill, just give us a sense of what the road ahead looks like for the hotel sector.
Yeah, I think just to take a quick step back to the beginning of this, the impact on hotels has obviously been devastating. Some have just chosen to close. The rest of us are operating at next to no occupancy, no revenue, with as a handful of staff. So it's been devastating in terms of the layoffs, in terms of the financial impact, and obviously health of everybody involved with COVID-19 is all of our first concern. So everybody's done what they had to do. Looking forward, I think from everybody in the hotel sector, we see this as probably an 18-month recovery period. There really is no prospect of a robust, profitable summer ahead of us. And so going in through a peak season into an off season when we would normally decline and have lower occupancies in the winter, and knowing there will be no larger events such as conferences driving business to Victoria. We obviously understand all of these reasons for health, and we're not contesting them in any way, but at the same time, the road recovery for us is we see it as a 12 to 18-month recovery period. There's no quick fix to getting hotels and tourism back to their old levels, and it's going to be a challenging road ahead for sure.
Yeah, so you're talking about the fall of 2021 is when you think there may have been a successful summer next summer, and by next fall, you're hoping your members will be in good shape to get of next winter.
That would be a realistic expectation, is that if we have a normal-ish summer next year, that hopefully hotels can recover and be in some better position heading into the winter of 2021.
Sounds pretty challenging. Sounds extremely challenging. You were talking to me before about how federal programs have helped. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that being a lifeline at the moment and how that's helping you. But also the other thing I'd like to hear is, and what's still required. I know there's been a big push, and we have absolutely done everything we can at the Chamber to support it, asking for particular help for the tourism sector. That includes absolutely hotels, because the current programs are a lifeline, but it may not be enough, as you say, to see these major players through till next year. So
I think I would say, to speak to the first point, the wage subsidy, it will be a huge help moving forward. And it has been already. We appreciate the efforts from the federal government. It's been, and the 75% is a very, very generous subsidy. It's available to everybody. It's going to help us through the summer as we learn and relearn how to do our business, which is obviously, and watch things build back from a very, very dark place. So that'll be a huge help for the next 3 months. There's no question. I guess the question is what else we need. And I think marketing is going to be marketing for the destination as a whole for all tourism businesses, including hotel, is going to be key as well, because there's no recovery. Once it's safe to travel, there's no recovery if there's no customers. And so, the subsidy is fantastic, but if there isn't any revenue, it isn't a lot of use because there's not a lot of jobs for people to go back to. And trust me, every hotelier I know wants to bring back as many people as fast as possible, but and because especially given the 75% wage subsidy makes that very easy to do if you have revenue and if you have cash flow. But if there's no revenue, there's no cash flow, and if there's no customers, there's no revenue. So I think the marketing side of it, when it is safe to travel, and whether that's a regional based to start and then broader after that, I think seeing travelers come back through some sort of marketing efforts from Destination Greater Victoria, probably Destination BC. So seeing money poured into there would be great. There were some announcements, I believe, last Friday for some critical funds, and that's obviously a start. That's great.
Yeah, that's for the destination marketing organizations themselves. So because their funding got wiped out when the hotels had no business because they get their MRDT tax through you.
They do.
So they lost their budget. So the provinces has stepped up and provided some funding for them throughout the province, all of them. Yeah.
So I would say longer term, when we talk about a 12 to 18 month recovery period, more help, more support. And I know every industry suffering, and a lot of industries are suffering, and there's a lot of tax dollars getting handed out. So, I don't say this knowing that the government doesn't have tough decisions ahead on the financial and the health fronts. But I would be concerned after September when the wage subsidy runs out, or beginning of September, sorry, what happens after that and what that roadmap looks like. And that's, between that and getting customers back, it's obviously a complex situation, and the more support we can receive for the entire tourism industry, the better.
Yeah. And, I think what we've been saying from the outset is that tourism is a disproportionately hard hit sector. So yes, of course, the whole economy is suffering, but there's a few parts of the economy that have had incredibly disproportionate impact, and tourism is one of them. So in my view, that's a case for additional federal assistance, and it's not that other parts of the economy aren't suffering. It's just, do you want tourism to be there to survive as a sector and to contribute to your economy in the future? And if so, you need to help now. Yeah. So you talked about your staff coming back and trying to figure out a different model. Could you just talk a little bit about what you're dealing with now in that regard?
Yeah, I think all hoteliers are going to have to look at their business and every position and every facet of your business, and look at every job and see what we still do, what we can do, what has to change, what becomes more important. Things we talked about were things like handling guest luggage and valet parking, and taking things to guest rooms and how we do that. And there's so many intricate parts of our operation that have to be looked through a health lens for the safety of our staff and our guests. It's a very detailed process. It's certainly, between staffing and PPE, it will likely increase costs because we're going to have extra considerations on every front, in every job, to consider how we do business in the coming months and in the new world.
Yeah, so there's the things that you obviously have to do differently, and then there's the additional things that you now have to add on. You were giving me some examples of, explicitly, had a good term for it, the theater of cleaning, like explicitly demonstrating cleaning so that your customers have greater confidence in the environment that they're in your hotel. So could you talk a little bit about that?
I think there's got to be some transparency to the efforts being made and the visibility of, the customer's going to expect us, as they should, to operate in a safe environment. And we've seen in the restaurant sector that WorkSafe BC is allowing restaurants to open once they have their health and safety COVID plan in place. And that's a fair expectation, because we want to operate our hotels in a manner that's safe for our staff and safe for our guests. So I think with that, the expectation of the customer is going to be that the cleaning, that the measures we're taking are clear, transparent, and obvious. And when I took that from I think it was a Washington Post article, the theater of housekeeping, in that the customer is going to have comfort in seeing the protective equipment and seeing the efforts we're making to know that the health is a serious concern for their safety and in our buildings.
Yeah, and And then beyond that, you were also talking about what it means for actual use of the rooms. And that is quite staggering to me, the amount of additional cost you're going to incur with how you're going to manage use of the room. So could you maybe talk about
Yeah.
that?
So we're currently letting our rooms sit out for 24 hours. That's our current, the WorkSafe BC guidelines for hotels is actually only 3 hours after a guest checks out, but we're taking a more conservative view and leaving a room out for 24 hours before there's any staff member entry into that room. And using a rotation cycle. So once it's clean, they're not in place again for, most cases, 24, 48, even 72 hours after. As we get a little busier, we're going to have to manage those loads. But I expect there will be some stipulations, probably from WorkSafe BC, on how long rooms should sit out and how long between guests should a room before it's cleaned and rented again. And it may change the way we sell our rooms. If I have to hold the room out for 24 hours and then clean it and then wait 24 more hours potentially, the one night stay is going to be a very challenging stay to sell because I can't sell it again for 3 days. Whereas if I bring a customer in for 4 or 5 days, it's a much better arrangement for both parties. So I could see it changing a little of how we operate, depending on what the regulations are for, the safe cleaning of rooms, the safe cleaning of rooms for our guests and our staff.
Right. The hotel sector has a long-standing, has been a long-standing leader in the use of dynamic pricing. Mm-hmm. So how can you see dynamic pricing being used to try to maximize what you're faced with now?
Yeah, I would expect that there would be a premium charged and a discount offered on. So the premium being on the short-term stay, the 1 or the 2 night. And if you were staying a little longer, there's likely going to be discounts the longer you stay, because it becomes, it's better for the hotels to have you in for a few nights in the region than it is to sell that room in one night and not be able to sell again. So I expect, and we're planning on that environment where the multi-night stay, the longer stay, will have a discount attached to it to encourage longer stay travel.
Makes sense. So I'm going to ask one of our audience questions now, because it's related to that one, and that's about the staycation idea. So you're mm-hmm. facing all these additional expenses, but how are you thinking about, despite that, opportunities, incentives, attracting hyperlocals, people in the region who might just like a change from their own house, especially since we're all holed up in our houses so much these days, or, Vancouver, BC travelers. So what do you anticipate with regard to that kind of idea?
So I think it's a great question, because I believe that our market, for once we're cleared to open, hopefully later in June, for non-essential travel, because currently it's only for essential travel that hotels are open, I believe that our market will be locally, regionally driven. So we're going to be finding ways to appeal to locals, Vancouver Islanders, British Columbians. I can't say with confidence that I know that we'll be able to welcome guests beyond that in the short term. I don't know what that timeline looks like. So my expectation is that you'll be seeing offers for BC residents and Vancouver Island residents and staycations, because that will be the primary market for hotels for, at least the short term after that window is opened.
Yeah, and I think that puts hotels in this category that is, I'm not saying it's a very tough financial circumstance for you, but if people see it as a once in a lifetime opportunity for the locals to experience some of these magnificent hotels and magnificent tourist services, attractions, activities that we have, Butchered Gardens is the other one that comes to mind. Usually we're in a very robust market. We have lots and lots of visitors, and that's what our industry is built on. But maybe we've got a summer where, get out and have your own experience of these amazing things that we offer visitors, and that locals often say, well, maybe one of these days I'll get around to it.
I know. I really hope that's the case, because it would be wonderful for all of us to enjoy our backyards and our regions, and support business and support travel. I know that's what Bonnie Henry's messages on her daily calls has been, that BCers should expect to be traveling in BC this summer, and not go far from home. So when we hear not go far from home from her, Hopefully that gets a lot of people into hotels. And I mean, I've gotten calls already from people in town who want to ask if it's okay to come to the hotel. And we're still supporting that message that it's non-essential travel, or sorry, it's essential travel only. But I do feel there are some people that would love to get out and been holed up in their house and come downtown and eat in a restaurant and try a hotel. And so I expect you'll see some offers out there, and we're going to need those customers to get this business back. The summer, I mean, the summer is going to be subdued. It's not without international travel and without travel from the United States. It's going to be a challenging, softer, subdued summer than we've ever seen.
Yeah, and the camping reservations just opened. Was it last week? Early this week. It was a Monday.
Wow.
And that's crashing. I got to say, camping can be highly overrated, and there's nothing like a nice day at the Magnolia to make camping look really, subpar. So please, everyone, think about a beautiful hotel at a reasonable price for an alternative vacation this year. So another interesting impact that we talked about just before this live event was how all of the social distancing, hygiene, public safety, health issues has impacted Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
And VRBO and those that alternative to the hotel kind of, as you put it, gray market industry. So talk a little bit about how you see that affecting hotels.
Certainly, the impact on short-term vacation rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, has been clearly as devastating to that sector of the accommodations market as the hotel market. And I know there was an editorial in the paper last weekend about the impact on that and how it might lead to units hitting the market. It's a challenging subject because there are many short-term vacation rentals in Victoria. They have certainly taken a share from the hotels, but we've all had a good number of years. I do wonder, I mean, the hotels are highly regulated with WorkSafe BC and a history of being in hospitality professionals, and in the areas such as cleaning, we're quite heavily regulated. So I guess one of my concerns would be how a large corporation can, ensure that same level of cleanliness in the short-term vacation market. I don't know. I have confidence that we can adopt those models in our sector quite safely and quite well. And then, it'll be challenging because those are all units that are sitting empty, just like hotel rooms. So it will be challenging to see what happens to that sector, and whether some of those rental units get sold off as long-term rentals, or whether some of those get sold off as accommodations. And it's a complex subject because there's certainly, going into this, there was essentially zero rate vacancy, and the cost of living in Victoria has been getting higher and higher and higher, with rental pricing being one of the key drivers. So I think we saw in Vancouver that they saw a significant drop in the price of a 2-bedroom apartment in the month of April, and they accounted Airbnb as one of those factors. So it will be something to watch and see how that plays out, but certainly it's had a huge impact on their industry as well.
Yeah. Right. As you just said, it's all about public confidence these days. You talked about your theater of housekeeping, so that people know that you're doing the job, not you are doing the job, but people need to see that. And, as you said, that's a much easier proposition for a large hotel with those regulations already being met than for somebody running Airbnb out of their home. Mm-hmm. Okay, I've got another question when it comes to financial survival of the sector.
Yeah.
Are hotels looking at doing a timeshare sale of rooms to individuals, or shared revenue plans to generate capital to get through these times and present a buyback plan in the future?
So I haven't heard of that specific proposal from any hoteliers I've spoken with thus far. However, I would say it's certainly an innovative idea. There's going to be a lot of challenges ahead. So ways to find liquidity through that next winter, particularly. It's an idea I could see some hotels exploring. I don't know the legalities or the zoning behind it with respect to, if there are changes you'd have to have, because where it's the strata units or timeshare units versus the current model the hotel's operating in. But certainly it's something that I could see hotels exploring potentially to create liquidity if they're in that situation where it's absolutely needed.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we're almost out of time already. This always zips past so fast. Just to wrap up, what would you say the state of mind is of your members these days? I know it might be a difficult question to characterize them all in a certain way, but what would you say the state of mind is?
I think we're going into a summer without any customers on the books, and we're concerned that obviously the health of the industry. I know all of us have worked really hard these last 12 weeks since it started to keep our buildings open and plan for the future, but it's hard to plan when there isn't. This is all unprecedented and there's no roadmap. So I'd say we're all doing our best to just plan as best we can to get this back and get people working and get tourists traveling in a safe manner as soon as we can. I mean, we'd love to be back to some profitable level of business, welcoming guests as we've been doing all of our careers. So, staying optimistic and as well hoping that there is continued support for the industry, tourism as a whole, not just hotels, moving forward, hopefully past the summer to get us through that next winter and get us into next year. We don't see this as this isn't a thing. It's going to be very challenging come September if we run out of subsidies and we're trying to get through a winter with low occupancies, with no international travel and no conferences. So there's a lot of challenges ahead, but I would say our industry is staying positive and trying to operate as proactively as possible and get our buildings open in a safe and prudent manner.
Yes, and I think you face one of the challenges of the restaurant sector, which is how do you do all of that and still provide a welcoming, hospitable, enjoyable environment for the people who do want to experience your very beautiful hotels.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. Looking at every job, seeing how we can change it if it has to change, and still, welcome people with open arms from a distance. Do the jobs we do, because we love what we do. We're in this business because we love welcoming guests to our hotels and having them at our hotels. And so how do we do that in a new environment and still have that service level be that which hotels like the Magnolia and the Fairmont Empress and other beautiful properties in Victoria, we're all, we've been recognized for years on this. So how do we do that in the new world and keep that experience special?
Exactly. Well, we're absolutely in your court. Anything the Chamber can do to help, we'll do our best to help, and all the best to you and your members in the very challenging times ahead. So thank you very much, Bill, for joining us and giving us some of your valuable time and your insights.
Thanks, Catherine. We really appreciate your support from the Chamber.